What's up, YouTube? It is your girl Latrina, and I am back again today with another tarot spread read. And to start off with our first card, we have the Magician and the Six of Wands as well with that. And it has the message of lawsuit, toil and labor, and we got the base chakra card. And it looks like there was an individual that was practicing magic to gain a victory, to attain a victory. This was a magician, the magician card, along with the Six of Wands, which does speak of a victory. And they worked upon this victory and this actual this spell work. I'm seeing some spell work going on further on into the read. I can see that. I can see it. I can really see it. Those cards, I have like 2 to 3 cards coming out, speaking of spell work. And this is the first one. This being the first card, speaking of spell work, that magician. And this spell work might be done just to gain a victory in some sort of a case or a lawsuit. And they did work upon this situation with toil and labor. This situation was worked upon. And they may even have something to do with this base chakra. That's dealing with someone's stability. This lawsuit may be dealing with someone's stability and maybe what they do for work. Or they did this as an occupation, just trying to put spells on lawsuits or something. Maybe that was their occupation, or they worked upon it. Because coming out in the second row, we have the Death card in the reverse, as well as the Ten of Wands coming out in the reverse, which does leave someone in despair. This death spell, it's left them under heavy burdens and in despair. Heavy burdens and then despair comes out with that row. Whatever death magic that they were doing as the magician, it's just left them in despair. And it's actually even given them a financial loss. Left them in a financial loss as well. Whatever death spells that they worked upon, that's what they worked upon it. And they was expecting a victory from these spells. They was even doing spells in court regarding this lawsuit, because the magician came out right with that. They was expecting a victory with what they worked upon. And then next in our third row, we have the Temperance card, which does have the message of show me your ID. So this does regard some type of identity. Here we are again with this identity situation. Somebody's having to verify maybe their identity. And we got the Nine of Wands coming out with that Temperance card. And the Nine of Wands speaks of this person that is protected from this spell work. Whomever did this spell work, or whoever they performed this spell work on, regarding this lawsuit, and even these death spells that they were casting on an individual. And you can see the spell activity. This is the Nine of Wands. And there's nothing but fire, a fire flame around this particular woman. and these were spells that were being casted upon her. But this Nine of Wands individual is actually a wounded soldier. She's a survivor. This individual is a survivor. And there was no balance, no temperance. There was no type of proper mixture. Temperance comes out, speaking of balance, and two things coming together. So whatever they were trying to get to come together, it did end up, a coffin. The coffin card came out right here in this third row. There was a death to that situation regarding someone's identity and even what they worked upon with others, because the solitude comes out in the reverse. They were not alone when they did this spell work and these death spells, and even court, they did some stuff to the court. They was trying to do magic on the court, which that does come out. They was expecting a victory in this courthouse with this lawsuit, whatever this lawsuit is dealing with. And they was actually working upon the situation, trying to affect somebody's, and maybe this lawsuit will affect somebody's foundation, their base chakra is really what this lawsuit did. It affected their foundation because it's left them in despair, and it's also giving them this Ten of Wands. This Ten of Wands is coming out right with this death. This death, comes out in the reverse, meaning somebody was not willing to stop. Someone was not willing to put an end to, maybe they was feeling an emotional loss, which was the reason why they did not want to put an end to this situation with this magic that was being done on this lawsuit. And also these death spells that they were doing. When we got the death in the reverse, that's somebody just not wanting to stop. They want to continue to put their toil and labor, which came out in there, which has caused them nothing but despair and heavy, heavy burdens, which is that Ten of Wands depicts someone that's being heavily burdened. And then it does also deliver the message of the STD card coming out in the reverse. So I'm not sure, what that depicts when it comes out in the upright. That means, they may be in despair about an STD, but it's left something in the coffin. Something has completely died. Something has no life for it's left. It's been buried. Something had to be buried. And I'm not sure if this death magic actually caused an actual ending to someone's life, because that coffin does represent a funeral or a burial. A coffin is a coffin, and there's really no more literal meanings to this. Something that didn't even have the proper mixture or the proper balance or, the proper temperance. It, maybe there was an identification issue is what got them caught up, because this ID came out because somebody was protected. Somebody was a wounded soldier and a survivor and also protected. At the same time, whenever you see that Nine of Wands, it speaks of, someone being protected from that actual spell work that was being casted upon their life, trying to bring it into a particular person using spell work, trying to win a victory in a courthouse matter regarding a lawsuit using this spell work also, because they're, it put them in heavy burdens and in despair. And then moving on, they couldn't see because we have this Two of Swords coming out. Right in this fourth row, the very first card in the fourth row is the Two of Swords, which says that they couldn't see. What was the Four of Swords? I think it was something coming to rest, but somebody is restless. That's what that tells me. With that four of swords being in the reverse, it's left them restless even, and they can clearly see something. That two of swords in the reverse, meaning that you can see something very clear. Because when it's in the upright, they are blind to some things when it's in the upright, but it's in the reverse. And what they could clearly see at this point is actually made them restless. Whatever's being clearly seen or whatever's being seen about this false person, which does come out in the fourth row. It's the last card that I got in this fourth row, and this false person is in the reverse. So someone can clearly see that, and it's made them restless. And it's even dealing with the material harvest. It's dealing with the material harvest, this situation that's left them restless, and that they can clearly see about this false person coming out in the reverse. It's left them restless. Something can be clearly seen about this spell work. And I'm sure it may be, maybe somebody did pass, with this coffin card coming out. Maybe that's what makes it so clear to see, that someone is protected from this type of identity fraud, or this type of situation with this lawsuit. And this magician was doing this work, expecting a victory in court with this lawsuit. He was expecting a victory because that Six of Wands comes out in the first row on something that he worked upon, regarding his stability or someone's stability, getting that base chakra card out. This was regarding stability, finances, and material harvest. It was regarding a material harvest, but it's left someone that they didn't want to change. They did not want to put an end to this spell work or to this heavy burden. They refused to. Maybe their refusal to put an end to a situation left them under heavy burden and in despair. This spell work left them under heavy burden and in despair because there was no balance. There was no temperance to that situation. The situation may be dealing with someone's actual ending, an actual ending of their life, from what I'm seeing from that coffin card, and something that they didn't do alone because the solitude is in the reverse. So that tells me that they absolutely worked with others, because even in this Nine of Wands, in the traditional tarot, you can actually see a circle formed around an individual with all these wands and sticks, coming towards it. And that may be this circle that they did, with these spells. But it was more than one individual by that solitude being in the reverse. And it may have even led to someone's ending, because we got the death in the reverse as well as the coffin card. That's a double confirmation of something coming to a complete end, possibly with someone's life. And then in this fourth row, like I said, they actually could see something very clear about this financial harvest with this false person coming out in the reverse. Something was seen clear about this false person in the reverse. I guess if somebody's in the reverse and they're also a false person, who could not but see that, because it's just left them restless now. They're in a state of restlessness, and it's actually because of what they can actually clearly see about this false person and this material harvest. And in the last row, this is the confirmation of more spell work activity. Something like I said, they refuse to accept that something was over. they refuse to accept that something was over with this spell work, and it's actually leaving people in coffins and things like that. Because we have the Five of Wands coming out here in this last row, which